straight ahead on Law&Crime Daily.
We don't know where an accused murderer's at.
Prosecutors seek a new arrest warrant for the accused Kenosha shooter, Kyle Rittenhouse. But a judge denies their motion. New footage of the Capitol riot gives an inside look into the deadly insurrection, what it means for the impeachment trial of the former president.
They have bear spray in the crowd. Bear spray in the crowd.
Plus, Hustler magazine editor and First Amendment champion Larry Flint dies. A look back at the landmark Supreme Court decision, and along with Terry Austin. A judge in Wisconsin is denying a request by the state to rearrest the accused Kenosha shooter. Prosecutors requested a new warrant for Kyle Rittenhouse after learning he moved and didn't tell the court of his new address. Rittenhouse is charged with killing 2 people and wounding a 3rd during protests last summer. The defense says Rittenhouse moved from Illinois to a safe house after receiving death threats. The father of one of the deceased and the surviving victim asked the judge to raise Rittenhouse's bond.
Whatever the statutes are, they must be wrong, because this guy can just go and do whatever he wants after he killed our son. Our son didn't get to spend Thanksgiving with us, but Rittenhouse did. He got to spend all kinds of time at the bar, live it up, making videos with his white supremacist friends, singing videos with a shirt that says, "Free as F." You're not going to be free as F. Justice is going to be served to you.
I would like to restate that it is, in my opinion, that Mr. Rittenhouse has shown a pattern of lack of remorse during this bond time before trial, and I would also recommend that the bail be raised to $4 million.
The defense provided the court with a P.O. box, and the judge ultimately ruled in their favor.
So he is in violation for not updating his address, and that has to be addressed going forward. But he also, as Mr. Richards has pointed out, he appeared on the last hearing, which was the one, which was the return notice. He was there at Mr. Richards' office. So I'm assuming he came from wherever he was to Racine to attend that meeting, and he's here today. So I'm going to deny the motions. And quite apart from the interest of the defendant, after what this town has been through in the last 6 months, I don't want any more problems. The police don't need any more problems. We don't need to have people's safety in jeopardy in any way. So I think that the desire that the bond or that the defendant's address be kept from public scrutiny is a legitimate one.
This is highly irregular. We have a right to know this. I would argue the public has a right to know it as well. I understand the court's ruling from sealing it from the public, but our office has a responsibility to enforce the laws, enforce the bond here, to file bail jumping charges if there's a violation of that, and we cannot do our job without this information.
The Sheriff's Department was in charge of reporting bond violations and the like to us, and I think the same situation is true now. Hearing's over. Thank you.
The defendant doesn't reside in Kenosha County, Your Honor. The sheriff can't help me because he doesn't reside.
Thank you.
Joining us here today is criminal defense attorney Imran Ansari and Terry Austin. Imran, I get it's a violation of his bond, but I mean, we're both defense attorneys. We've seen this. It's a minor infraction. Do you think the judge, at the end of the day, made the right call?
So, Brian, the main concern here for the court, for the judge, is if Rittenhouse is a flight risk. And the judge was very particular to point out that Rittenhouse has appeared at each of his appearances. So this is, in the grand scheme of things, a minor sort of flub. He was supposed to update the address, which is usually the case for a defendant who is out on bail. He didn't do that. And I think his attorney did make a compelling argument that, there may be some safety risks here. And the judge also pointed out that Rittenhouse, although he's supposed to provide an address, where he is residing, he's not actually, as per the terms of this bond, ordered to be there, meaning in house arrest. So, yes, listen, is it going to compel his appearance? I think that was what the judge is looking for. There has not been any issue with him appearing previously, and the judge was confident that he would appear again.
Absolutely. Terry, the judge also denied the request to increase the bond to $200,000. Thoughts?
You know what? I agree with the judge's ruling for all the reasons that Imran just stated. This was really a technicality. Yes, he should have updated his address, but we know he's not going to try to flee because he showed up at this hearing. So why would you increase the amount of the bond? So while it wasn't a correct address listed, I think it was just a failure to communicate, and the bond should remain as it is.
Absolutely, and ultimately the question is he going to come back to court? And I think the judge is following the law in that regard. Thank you both. Now to the latest on the so-called Doomsday cult duel. Terry has an update on one of the motions we've been following closely.
Brian, I've just learned that the judge has denied the defense's request to reconsider disqualifying the prosecutor overseeing their case. Lori Vallow and her husband, Chad Daybell, are facing charges of conspiring to conceal and destroy evidence in the deaths of Vallow's 2 children. The bodies of JJ and Tylee Ryan were discovered buried in a shallow grave on Daybell's Idaho property. They're not charged with murder, but the prosecutor was heard doing a secretly recorded meeting with Vallow's sister, saying he plans to file conspiracy to commit murder charges. The defense now wants prosecutor Rob Wood removed, but the judge and now the Idaho Supreme Court upholds that there is no basis for his removal.
Still ahead on Law and Crime Daily, Trump impeachment trial enters its 3rd day. Our expert analysis on the legal arguments. But first, never before seen footage of the Capitol riot, the bravery of the officers, and how close impeachment managers used a collection of never before seen or heard radio traffic security footage and body cam video from the Capitol building to lay out their case for why they believe former President Donald Trump incited insurrection on January 6th.
Multiple capital entries! Multiple capital entries!
Watch the red dot, which moves up the lower steps of the Capitol, indicating the approximate location of the rioters as they surge past the police. The second man through the window is wearing full tactical body armor and is carrying a baseball bat. Others are carrying riot shields. And they said that anyone they got their hands on, they would have killed, including Nancy Pelosi, and that, quote, they would have killed Vice President Mike Pence if given the chance. Officer Goodman passes Senator Mitt Romney and directs him to turn around in order to get to safety. And watch how Officer Goodman provokes the rioters and purposefully draws them away from the door to the Senate chamber and towards the other officers waiting down the hall. The mob continued to look for Speaker Pelosi throughout the time they occupied the Capitol, including invading her offices. The staff moves from their offices through the halls and then enters a door on the right-hand side. That's the outer door of a conference room, which also has an inner door that they barricaded with furniture. One of the rioters, you can see, is throwing his body against the door 3 times until he breaks open that outer door. Luckily, when faced with the inner door, he moves on.
This security video shows Ashley Babbitt, followed by others in the mob, turning the corner toward the House lobby doors where the members were leaving. Minutes later, at 2:44 p.m., Ashley Babbitt attempted to climb through a shattered window into the House lobby. To protect the members in the lobby, an officer discharged his weapon. Many members are still wearing their gas masks. They walk just feet away from where Capitol Police are holding an insurrectionist at gunpoint. This security video from 2:56 p.m. shows the mob in the House of Representatives wing on the 2nd floor of the Capitol. Insurrectionists who are still inside the building are fighting with the police, who are overwhelmed and trying to get them out. The Senate chamber was not evacuated until 2:30 p.m. The mob had been in the building for more than 15 minutes. You cannot see it in this footage, but quick-thinking Senate floor staff grabbed and protected the electoral ballots that the mob was after. Additional security footage shows how Leader Schumer and the members of his protective detail had a near miss with the mob. They came within just yards of rioters and had to turn around. Seconds later, they return and run back down the hallway, and officers immediately shut the door and use their bodies to keep them safe. For hours and hours, these insurrectionists were in hand-to-hand combat with these brave men and women.
We're still taking rocks, bottles, and pieces of flag and metal poles. See the crowd is using munitions against us. They have bear spray in the crowd. Bear spray in the crowd.
140 officers injured, 3 officers who ultimately lost their lives. We all know that awful day could have been so much worse. The only reason it was not was because of the extraordinary bravery of the men and women of the Capitol Police and the Metropolitan Police Departments.
It's a lot closer than we thought initially. Back to describe the impeachment trial of former President Trump is defense attorney Imran Ansari and co-host Terry Austin. Terry, the defense at the end of the day is trying to, and when I say defense, that of former President Trump, to show that there is no direct link between the former president and the insurrection. Do you think the House impeachment managers, though, are addressing that issue in their arguments?
They absolutely are, Brian. They did an excellent job. It was succinct, it was clear, and it was dramatic. What they said is that there was a provocation, and that provocation started when Trump established the lie that it was a fraudulent election. Then they said there was an attack on January 6th. And on January 6th, he told his supporters to go down to the Capitol and, start a riot. And that is exactly what they did. He said, fight back. And then they showed that there was harm. And I thought that this was particularly insightful. They said that not only was there harm to life, but liberty, meaning that now the Capitol is all gated up, and also property. So they did an excellent job showing the connection between what he said and what they did.
Now, Imran, that's the connection the House impeachment managers are laying out, as we saw there, a case that the former president incited a riot through social media posts and videos on January 6th. To you, as someone who has represented a lot of people, a lot of famous people in great cases, are these arguments persuasive?
So, Brian, I actually think that they're doing a very persuasive job in presenting their case. It's very prosecutorial. It's very evidence-driven. They're relying heavily on the videos that were taken on that day. And the way they're doing it is that they're laying out block by block, piece by piece, and looking to connect it to the statements, to the actions of the president. Will it carry the day? Well, just based on the Senate makeup, perhaps not. Will it carry the day in terms of just what evidence has been put forth, the videos and the connections to the president? I think they're doing a very effective job, if at anything, in a symbolic sense.
Absolutely. We'll keep an eye on that, as it's just day 3 of many days in this impeachment trial. Coming up on Law and Crime Daily, an arrest made in the death of a teen found in a sugarcane field. Plus, a shocking new report of a plea deal ex-cop Derek Chauvin was willing to agree to. Why it was rejected, still ahead. A Louisiana woman is facing criminal charges in the death of a 15-year-old boy after his body was found in a sugarcane field. Authorities say Quaywan Bobby Charles's body was discovered in shallow water on November 3, 2020. His mother reported him as missing 4 days earlier to the local police. Police say the boy had been picked up outside his home by a woman and her 17-year-old son. The Iberia Parish Sheriff's Office says 37-year-old Janet Irvin is facing charges of contributing to the delinquency of a minor and failure to report a missing child.
Janet Irvin was arraigned in the 16th Judicial Court. The judge has set her bond at $400,000. I want the public to understand that anyone who has been incarcerated has a bond set, and if they can meet that bond, they have the right to bond out. At this time, Janet Irvin has not met that bond. I want to ensure the residents of Iberia Parish that your sheriff's office has collected the appropriate evidence needed by law enforcement personnel to legally obtain an arrest warrant for Janet Irvin, not relying on any private investigator's findings.
All right, back to break down this tragic death and disappearance is defense attorney Imran Ansari and Terry Austin. Terry, Quaywan's mother chose to show his disfigured face publicly, something reminiscent of Emmett Till, for the world to see. And she did this so she can kind of push why this was so bad. But do you see any potential civil charges coming up out of this story, and against who?
Well, you know, it does remind me of Emmett Till. They both involved a young black child who was gruesomely killed, and we know Emmett Till was racially motivated. We're not so sure here, but it could have been. You know, as far as the civil case, I think there are reasons to bring a wrongful death action. She's claiming, the mother is, that she reported him missing one day, and yet nothing was done for days after the fact. And the sheriff is disputing exactly the date he was reported missing, and also whether an Amber Alert should have been made here. So she has grounds, I think, for bringing a wrongful death and maybe even a civil rights claim.
Now, Imran, all of that's really interesting because, as I understand it, the local police never notified state police, and it's the state police who actually have the power to issue an Amber Alert. The police also didn't report his disappearance to local media. The family is placing the blame of Quaywan's death squarely at the police's feet. What do you think?
Yeah, Brian, that's, in my opinion, a little problematic for the police. I think there could have been a break-in procedure. There may be a procedure when someone is missing, particularly a child, on the local level that wasn't followed. And we know that the state police did not get that Amber Alert out there because they were not notified. It also may lead to some changes in some legislation locally down there. Perhaps they're going to give the local police the authority to issue an Amber Alert. But I think it's pretty interesting regarding that interplay, and that may be the grounds for a civil suit.
Absolutely. Thank you both. When we come back, remembering Larry Flint, the media mogul, the scandal, the lawsuits, and the legacy. A judge presiding over the George Floyd case has denied the state's request to reinstate third-degree murder charges against the 4 former Minneapolis police officers. Derek Chauvin was initially charged with third-degree murder and is now facing 2 charges of second-degree manslaughter and second-degree murder. According to a report by the New York Times, Chauvin had agreed to plead guilty to third-degree murder and a 10-year prison sentence. But the report says then Attorney General William Barr rejected the deal because he was worried it would look too lenient. The Times said the deal needed federal approval because Chauvin asked to serve his time in federal prison. Jury selection in Chauvin's trial is scheduled to start on March 8th. Pornographer and self-proclaimed First Amendment champion Larry Flint has died. Angenette Levy takes a look back at his life and legacy.
Larry Flint was flamboyant and controversial. His supporters call him a tireless champion for the First Amendment, but his critics always said that he was just using the attention to make money off of selling hardcore pornography.
Well, we lost a giant. A lot of people just say, oh, well, he was a pornographer. He was so much more than that.
Paul Cambria was Larry Flint's longtime lawyer and friend. Flint's legal battles over images in Hustler magazine were legendary. He was arrested in the 70s in Cincinnati, his conviction overturned on appeal. But Flint's life changed forever in 1978 when serial killer Joseph Paul Franklin shot him outside of a courthouse in Georgia. Flint nearly died and was paralyzed from the waist down.
What Franklin didn't like, there was a biracial couple in the magazines that Larry Flint put in there. It just drove him crazy. So he said he went the day before. He knew where he was going to lunch every day with his attorney. So he found a building right across the street.
Flint pressed on, winning a case at the U.S. Supreme Court against the Reverend Jerry Falwell in 1988. The case determined that public figures could not recover damages for satire.
His Supreme Court case against Jerry Falwell was a landmark case. It's cited repeatedly by the Supreme Court as precedent.
Back one last time to discuss the passing of Larry Flint is Terry Austin and Imran Ansari. Imran, a controversial figure to many, but that put him in the limelight for the First Amendment issue of freedom of speech. Thoughts on his legacy and his passing?
Yeah, Brian, listen, that case, which was, Hustler versus Falwell, it's a landmark, groundbreaking First Amendment case. I handle defamation cases, Brian, and a lot of times we're citing to that case. That really stood up as a landmark case for the First Amendment Supreme Court precedent. And that really goes back to Larry Flint and his fight for his magazine and standing firm for his First Amendment rights. That really stood that there's, parody is parody, a public figure is a public figure, and it really provided some protections for free speech in the press. And that goes back to Larry Flint.
Yeah, and Terry, there is no First Amendment case, that I know of at least, where someone says something we all agree on. There's always some controversy when it comes to First Amendment cases. How do you think the world will remember Larry Flint, though? First Amendment advocate, Hustler magazine, target of advocacy? What do you think?
I think all of the above. There's no question that many people think of him as someone who published a pornographic magazine. But I think his lawyer's right. He is much more than that. He is a business person first and foremost, and he did defend his magazine, and he wanted the right to say and do and publish what he thought was something that the public wanted. And kudos for his success as far as that's concerned. One thing I find very interesting is that he really was against Trump, and this whole First Amendment argument is interesting.
Thank you both for contributing, and thank you for joining us here on the Law and Crime Daily. We'll see you next time as we discuss justice in America.